Okay. Um, Welcome to my Duskbloods Network test review. This isn't really something that I normally do. Whenever I do like the food reviews and everything, I usually just write a bunch of stuff down. But I was encouraged by one of my very good friends. He knows who he is. I'm not going to drop any names just in case, but he told me I can kind of go either way. But I decided to make a video and do something a little bit different. I'm trying to do some different stuff with these kinds of things. This is going to kind of be unedited. I'm just going to talk. If I stutter, I stutter. If I don't, I don't. I'm not going to do anything crazy. I just want to kind of dive into this for those of you that want to know what I experienced when I did the network test, for those of you that followed along and everything. So it's going to be broken up into like 4 parts pretty much. So I have part 1 we're doing now, along with the introduction. I'm going to talk about the hub in the game, which is where you usually go to upgrade your character and change your character and things like that. Part 2, I'm going to talk about the characters that you both play as and play with. And then part 3, we're going to go over what a match pretty much looks like when you jump into the game, you start doing a match. And then part 4 is just general thoughts. It's going to be kind of quick. So I guess we could just kind of dive right in. So the hub, I don't know if it has a name. They didn't really specify, but it kind of looks like a modern yet Victorian, kind of like a nice house you would almost see now, but it still had a lot of Victorian roots. Not very Bloodborne-esque for those of you that know what that would mean, but it was really cool looking. There's 2 areas. There's the lobby where a lot of the stuff happens, and then there's a courtyard. So the courtyard is very simple. There's a character out there known as the Scarecrow. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't do anything. He's just in this yard where you kind of test out all your stuff. There's a lot of room. You can use your moves and everything anywhere, but out there's more room, and you could test all your stuff on him. He doesn't like die or get hurt or anything. It's really weird, but I guess they did that so you could just have more room and all that. And then in the lobby, there's 3 places that I noticed. So if you move straight forward from the platform, there's a spot that I believe is called the Circle of Blood. That has a bunch of the most important aspects of the lobby. So you can start a match, which we'll get into what all that entails later. You can change your character. You can look through the archive, which is pretty much an encyclopedia of everything that you've picked up and learned and done. So you could just reread on things. You could, at least in the network test, you could do tutorials in there and do all the tutorial levels and learn the basics of the game. And then you could also look at your controls and settings and everything. So that's the Circle of Blood, which is the most important part, I would say. There's no level up in this game. It seems like it's one of those games where your characters are what they are and that's it. You can't raise any stats or anything like that. Next to that, there's this big book, and it was locked, obviously, just for the network test, but the big book is where you customize your character. So in the final build of the game, you're going to be able to customize your character, which is going to be really cool, and just add on more replayability on top of the replayability that is already there. And then upstairs to the left, there was a hallway that was blocked off by a Dark Souls 3-esque fog wall barricade. For those of you who know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. So it was an inaccessible area. I don't know what's behind it. I don't want to know until the final build comes out, but that was another little portion. So there's probably going to be a shop or something over there that you can buy certain things. Again, this is all final build stuff, I figure. So it's just kind of things that we're not supposed to know yet. And that's pretty much the hub as well as the introduction. So I will see you all in part 2, where we're going to cover playable characters and NPC allies known as kin, which is really cool. All right, part 2. So for part 2, I'm going to go over the playable characters and the kin characters, which again are ally NPCs. Now, I'll go over the kin because they're really easy. So pretty much they're NPCs, non-playable characters that are allies to you. You find them in the world when you drop into a match, when you do what's called a Night of Dusk. That is the name of a match. There are these big discs that you summon them from, and certain kin are a part of certain like alliances or whatever. They have like a categorization to them. So there's the only one I could think of right now that I actually remember is there's sword kin. So if you know someone you like is a sword kin, you want to go to where there's the sword symbol in the sky, and then you could summon them out of that disc, out of that portal more, it would be considered, I would say. And you summon them, they join you. You could send them away to kind of just be like, all right, don't come out until I tell you to, or they could just follow you around. A lot of them have stipulations as to how effectively they follow you or not. There's one kin that she only follows you if you're like a certain distance from her or something like that, and she'll move over to you. Other than that, she stays in the same spot, things like that. Some are just slow, some are really fast. So there's a lot of stuff like that. The most important thing with kin, though, is that you can level them up. Most of them, when they level up, I don't know if they gain attack power or anything like that, but they all have level tied abilities. So there's one guy that when you level him up to 2, he gains like a poison cloud thing, and then when you level him up to 3, he kind of runs at people and like blows himself up. It's really crazy, but most of them go up until about level 3, maybe like 4 or 5. But once you get them around there, they kind of have everything that they need. Again, in the final build, they might explain more, so whether or not their melee attacks, because some of them have melee attacks, will get stronger if you level them up, or you could just stop at 3 and not really bother anymore. But they didn't say in the network test, so I'm not totally sure. How you level them up, there are these smaller discs in the matches that if you go to them, they level up your kin like with a lot of experience. If you don't have a kin on you, definitely go to those small discs anyway, because that experience will go into your character instead. But if you have a kin, definitely hit up those smaller discs. And then one of the lootables on the corpses is experience. And if you get regular experience or kin experience, it'll go towards your character if you don't have a kin. However, kin experience, if you have a kin with you, will always go to your kin. Again, they just have abilities to them that are all passive that they get when they level up. If you want to know what levels belong to which ability and vice versa, you could just look it up in the archive, because once you get a kin, they'll be in your archive. It's kind of like a bestiary. So once you experience them and have them, you could read up on them later. So it's kind of like that. And it's also with the pickup items like the throwables and everything. Those will also end up in the archive. So if you pick up something, you're not sure what it is, you could look later and the game will tell you. Now for playable characters. So I think that there's only going to be the 6 that were in the demo. So you have Albert, who is the gameplay, like, I don't know if he's going to be the box art guy, but he's the advertisement character. He's in a lot of the gameplay, and he's like the main guy there. There is Jan. Jan seems to be kind of like an anti-hero, like Ash and Gary from Pokemon kind of deal. He seems like he's your ally, but he's uneasy, and he's kind of a jerk, but he's ultimately going to be like cool with you. It's kind of weird. It's like a thing you kind of have to understand if you know it or not. There's Zork. He's just this really overpowered dude in like a diving suit. And I think with him, his description talks about the Zorkians. So I think that his name is more of like a title rather than his actual name. For those of you that play Bloodborne, it's kind of like Orphan of Kaz. That's not its real name. I don't think it has one, obviously, but it's more of a title than its actual name for those of you that understand what I'm saying there. And then there's Tron Lang. She just seems kind of like a warrior of some sort. There's Sniper Layla, who is a sniper. Obviously, she's got like a rifle and like a trench coat, and she's like a zombie. She kind of looks like a Hollow from Dark Souls, so she's really cool looking. And then there is, I don't remember his full name, but his name is like Senator something, so I just call him the Senator. In terms of designs, Albert's the most like Bloodborne looking one, which this game was speculated to be a spiritual successor to. He's really cool. I think he's got like royal lineage. He's got a fancy sword and everything like that. He uses like a submachine gun. Yan's funny. He kind of looks like he's wearing pajamas, and he has like an eyeless knight helmet. So he's got a big axe and like a nail in his left hand. So it's like really crazy. Zork's just in this big diving suit. Tron Lang has like a kimono and like a straw hat kind of deal. Layla, again, just has like a trench coat, pretty much. That's really it. And then the Senator has these ornate kind of government-looking robes, because I guess that was like his role, obviously, as a senator. But he's also kind of zombified looking as well. Every playable character has a few specific things that are different, but they all share in terms of features. Everybody has a melee weapon, a ranged weapon, a sigil, which I'll get into in just a moment, and then everybody has, in the network test, 2 abilities, but apparently it's going to become 3 abilities in the final build, which Ouroboros, who is a very prominent Souls YouTuber, I don't know how he figured this out or how he learned this, but he said in a podcast that there's going to be a 3rd ability. So you cycle those through and you earn those as you level up in a game, just as a fun fact. You always have one that you start with, but then your second one is tied behind a level, so you just have to make sure your character gets up high enough. I'll talk about that in part 3, about how you do that. But I would say, for me, I used Albert, Zork, and Jan a lot. My first 2 games ever, I won in a row. The first one was with Albert. The second one was with Zork. Albert just has like a sword and a submachine gun. His abilities are like, he starts with a blood blade, so he'll slash his sword and this wave of blood will come at people, and it's really cool. His ranged is the submachine gun, obviously, and then his second ability is like this beam of light, which just sucks if you're not the one using it. I'm sorry, that's just like a clock going off. And then you have Zork, who, being a diver kind of guy, he has like a harpoon gun. And for his abilities, I only know one of them, but it's called Human Rocket. And pretty much he kind of like hovers in the air. He's got jet turbines on his back, and then he just bolts at whoever you're kind of aiming at and just careens right at them. And it's really good for Grail battles, which again, I'll get into that later as to what that is. Yan, he has an axe and he has a nail in his hand. He's part of like this group called the Blood Hands, so they use a lot of magic. His range is just this somewhat overpowered flamethrower that he shoots out of his hand. His abilities is one that's like quick step, for those of you that knows what that is, and he just kind of zips around really fast, so it's good for movement and for closing distance and making it. If you need to get away from somebody or get up to somebody. And then his second ability, I believe, is something along the lines of he leaps into the air, slams down with like this crazy AoE attack, and then all these slashes come up, kind of like that move that Malekith does, that really awesome move that I love that doesn't suck at all in Elden Ring. For those of you that know what that is. So those are those 3. Those are the ones that I used most. Albert was my favorite. He's, something that FromSoft is really good at when you have a default character. They are always very well-rounded. Like, the default stuff in FromSoft games are really, truly, like, good to use. Because most of the time in a game, the default stuff, you're meant to grow out of it, but FromSoft is good about maintaining the defaults and the integrity of the defaults. So he was my favorite. Zork just doesn't take any stagger. He doesn't, like, move when you hit him. He just tanks right through it. He's slower, but it doesn't hinder him at all. He's really good for, like, tankier strength people, if you know what that's like means. Yan is a little bit faster paced. His axe is really cool. Has some good reach. And then Tron Lang and Layla, they're more of the close quarters people. I use Layla a lot. I was trying to win with her a couple of times. She's tough to use. I like the farther distance weapons more myself. And then the Senator's kind of like in the middle. He has like a cane. Tron Lang, her abilities is, her ranged attack is she throws her weapons. She has like those circular blade. I don't know what they're actually called. She throws those, and each melee, not melee, some of the ranged abilities are chargeable for more power. You just have to wait for them to fully charge. Hers is one of them. If you charge it, she throws multiple. If you just hit the button, she throws one. Her ability, she turns invisible, and then the other one, she has like this giant snake that has some pretty good AoE to it. Layla, I only remember one of her abilities. Her ranged weapon is a sniper rifle, which you could actually go into first person with. So if you're a Call of Duty person, if you do sniping games like Sniper Elite, she's very good for you. One of her abilities is she like summons a Gatling gun out of herself and just starts shooting it, and it's really crazy. I forgot what her other one was. And then the Senator, his melee weapon, his ranged weapon is like this bird he shoots out at you that has tracking. It's pretty good for pressure. And then his abilities, I think one of them is like a dash that closes distance really quick. And then I'm forgetting what his other one was. Again, these last 3 people I didn't really use too much. So yeah, that's pretty much like everybody's kind of situation. So everybody has a set loadout. So far, you can't change it. They might add stuff on later, but for now, that is what it is for each one. And then they have sigils. So sigils are cool. I don't know if you can change them in the final build, but you couldn't in the demo, in the network test. So sigils are pretty much these things that are on each character. For an example as to what they are and what they do, there's one sigil called Sworn Enemy. So if you meet the guy in the game who has sworn enemy as well, if one of you kills the other, you gain virtue. I will explain what that is in part 3 and why it's the most important thing ever. But stuff like that, it's an interactive kind of feature between you and other players if they have the same sigil as you. There's another one called like Old Ally. So if you meet somebody that has that one and you guys form an alliance, which you could do, there's alliances in these games, you can never break the alliance until you get to the last part of a Night of Dusk, which again, that's what a match is called. Part 3, I'll get to it all, don't worry. So pretty much, sigils are cool. They add a little bit of spice to a game. I don't know if each character has a specific sigil attached to them or if you could change it later or something like that, but for now, that's what it is, and it's really cool. Adds some dimension to the characters. Everybody has lore. If this game is anything like Night Rain, they're probably going to have like little missions for them that have cutscenes and further backgrounds as to who they are as characters. So, something to keep an eye out for those of you that are actually getting the game. Design-wise, everybody looks pretty cool. I think Yan is probably one of the more weaker designs. He looks like he's wearing pajamas and has like the helmet with no eyes on it, which is cool, but then the rest of him is just kind of like a onesie. It's really funny. Zork looks like a weird diving anteater, like diving suit anteater guy. I would say the better design ones are probably Albert and the Senator. I like the ornateness of their outfits, and it's really cool. And then Layla is kind of minuscule. And then Tron Lang is just kind of like more traditional look to her background. So yeah, the designs are really cool, obviously. FromSoft rarely misses with that. But yeah, so this is part 2 covering characters, playable characters, and kin. You know the drill. Part 3 is up next, and I'm finally going to get into what the game's all about, and that is a Night of Dusk, which is what a match is. Part 3, Night of Dusk, which is the big shebang. That is a match. That is what the point of the game is. What does a match look like? What does a Night of Dusk look like? So I will break it down. A Night of Dusk looks like this. There are 4 parts. The first 3 parts are called phases. The 4th part is called the Grail Battle. Phase 1, and each phase, 1, 2, and 3 serve a purpose, which kind of fades away as you get towards phase 3. So phase 1's purpose is what I called kind of like a build-up phase. So what you do just in a phase in general, no matter what phase we're talking about, there's a couple of things you want to do. You want to level up your character, find and level up your kin. You want to find one of your passives. I'll explain how the passives are and how they work and everything. You want to collect a bunch of stuff. You want to kill a bunch of stuff. And most importantly, you want to earn virtue, which is how you survive all the way through to the end of phase 3 and get into the Grail Battle. So what the heck was all of that I just said? Let's break it down. First of all, let's talk about the little sequential things that I threw in there. So you find your kin, you level them up. I already kind of explained how to do that. Leveling up, you either find the little discs or you find the pickups in the world, but you also get experience for both your character and your kin when you kill enemies and mobs. There are trespassers. Trespassers are these extra tough enemies that are kind of like field bosses in Elden Ring. Sometimes when someone initiates a fight with a trespasser or an elite trespasser, which is just an even stronger version than that, you will get an automatic co-op invitation that you could join or decline at your will. And then if you decline, you move on with your life. If you accept it, you're just transported quite quickly. The load times are very good in the game into the battle. And you guys can't hit each other, and you can only hit the boss. And if you beat the boss, you gain virtue for doing that. Again, I'll get into what virtue is and how to get it and why it's so important. So there's that. Then you have passives. So with passives, you basically have 2 types. So passives that are in a glowing red kind of orb, which also you could pick up from these enemies that have these big orbs on their back that are also red. Those are your ability passives. What those do is they could do a couple of things. They can either lower the cooldown. You have a choice. You could choose to lower the cooldown or make your passive stronger. I think you could also upgrade the usages of them, like the quantitative usages of them. So instead of being able to use it twice, you can use it 3 times. But I didn't pay that much attention. I just kind of jumped to lowering the cooldown because I just like to use stuff in rapid succession. Then you have your character passives. Those are glowing purple. Those you usually find either in the world or you get them from killing the field bosses, aka it's going to come back to me, the trespassers. Those are more broad. Those apply to just kind of everybody in general. So you could either level up your melee, level up your affinity damage. You could raise your affinity defense. Affinities are elements. I'll get into that in just a moment. You can raise your general defense. You can make your stagger damage higher against people. You can make your stagger defense higher so that they stagger you slower. When they stagger you, there's like a posture bar, which applies to you, other players, and enemies. When that fills, you break their posture, and you do like this vampire bite, which is really cool. When you do that to another player, it heals you, and I think it upgrades your health a little bit, but it definitely heals you. When you do it to enemies, it actually, for the most part, if they're lower level, weaker enemies, it makes them join you. I don't know what the limit on how many of them can be following you is. I've seen people have like 3 mobs following them, I think, in like some gameplay that mysteriously got out because it was like a big no-no to have gameplay. But you could have like 2 or 3. I've had about 2 people with me, and I think that's on top of your kin. I don't know the deep logistics of this, but I think you could probably have your kin and maybe 2 people. I don't know if there's a general follower limit of how many NPC characters can fight with you, but you know, that's like one of the other things. So that's what happens when you break posture. And getting back to the original discussion with the character passives, you could make that more likely to happen for you or less likely to happen against you. Yeah, things like that. So you could raise your melee damage and your stamina, your health, things like that. You can make your range damage stronger. So the passives are really good. And if you know the maps, you can find them at the beginning of each phase. And obviously when the next phase starts, it carries with you. So there is that. So phase 1, you're going to be doing a lot of that. You're going to try and gain some virtue. So let's get into virtue because I've said that word a lot. And you're probably like, what the hell is that? What is he talking about? Virtue, I don't know by definition, but it's just, I'm going to put it in my term. It's a thing you need to move on, and you need to have a lot of it. It's a numerical value in the top left of the screen next to your health and stamina. It looks similar to the design of the HUD, which is the screen, to Dark Souls 1 with the humanity. So for those of you that know what I'm talking about, it kind of looks akin to that. Pretty much, you need virtue to move on from phase 2. Everybody gets into phase 2 because at the end of phases 2 and 3, there's something that happens called culling. C-U-L-L-I-N-G. What is culling? If you don't have enough virtue, which means your number in the top left is represented in red, you will be culled. You will be kicked out of the game, and you'll have to start over from level 1 and with nothing in a brand new game. So you need to get as much virtue as you can, especially in phases 2 and 3. So phase 1 is your build-up phase. You can get some virtue, and mainly you're building your character. Phase 2 and 3, though, you have to get virtue. How do you get virtue? You get virtue in a couple of different ways. You can pick it up from killed enemies. You get like 1 point of virtue. You can light these fires, which are pretty much these corpses sitting in chairs glowing purple. Those give you 2 to 6 virtue. There is virtue you get from killing those field bosses I mentioned earlier, and everybody gets them. You also get passives from them, which is cool as a side note. But you get virtue from that. You get virtue from collecting a lot of stuff, so looting bodies, and then you get virtue from killing a lot of stuff, which includes players and enemies. Now, how that works is if you're top collector or top killer, you get virtue right when you earn that accolade. Then you get virtue right at the beginning of phase 2 and phase 3, assuming you hang on to it, right just at the start. You get a bonus bump of like 12 virtue just off the bat. So, you know, if you're top collector and you feel like you're low on virtue, don't worry. Once like phase 2 or 3 starts, you're going to get a bump. So it's really cool. Second place also gets it. You get like a starting one, and then you get a bump in the beginning of phases 2 and 3, but it's obviously significantly less. So you get virtue for that. And then most importantly, which is the big deal of phases 2 and 3, you get virtue from ritual sites. What are ritual sites? So when you spawn in on the map, you could choose the zone. There's like these big circles and you pick one, and there's a section of each map per phase. So, you go into the map and there's a glowing area. That's going to be the ritual site, which won't activate until the last like 3 minutes of the match. There's a clock in the top right of your screen, and when it hits like the red dot, that's when the ritual phase starts. In phase 1, there's no ritual site. It just kind of tells you, hey, there's like a minute left or whatever. But with phases 2 and 3, that glowing section on the map is where you want to end up when that time starts, and it'll prompt you on the screen. So what is a ritual site? How does it work? You go to a ritual site, and there's 2 zones that you could pick up these gems from. There's yellow gems and red gems. Red gems give you bonus virtue if you kill players when you're in the ritual site, when you enter it. And it'll tell you, like, ritual site entered, so you'll know when you're in there, and you could also look at your map. In the ritual site, though, there are these, like, stalks sticking out of the ground. They kind of look like weird swords, I guess. I didn't pay attention to their design, but they're cool. When you attribute yourself to them and you, like, kind of, whatchamacallit, you, like, swear to them or, like, pray to them or whatever, or I think it's, like, attribute yourself to them. You gain virtue for doing that, but if you pick up a yellow gem, you get bonus virtue on top of that. Now, if somebody kills you, even after you've attributed to one, they get virtue for doing that, but then they could attribute themselves to that one that you already claimed, and they gain that virtue, and you lose it. So you have to be careful with that. So you try to have to stay alive at that point in the ritual site. So the ritual site for phases 2 and 3, which serve as like, phase 2 is a bit of like phase 1. You're still trying to build up your character, but you're more trying to earn virtue. So phase 3, though, is where you shouldn't really try to build up your character all that much. You should just be trying to earn virtue, because at that point you're quite like ocked out, and you should be strong enough to body like most NPC like mob enemies. Even if you can't face another player, you could kill almost anything on the map. So you should be going after the trespassers and everything. But at the end of phase 2, I mentioned culling. At the end of phase 2, you start with 8 people in a lobby. At the end of phase 2, the bottom 2 virtue earners will be culled, leaving 6. At the beginning of phase 3, you start with 6, and the bottom 3 earners, so half the lobby, will be culled. Phase 3, again, serves as just trying to get more virtue. You should be quite built out by then if you like kind of have an idea of the game and what to do. So when you get to the end of phase 3, if you're one of the top 3 earners, you will move on to part 4, not phase 4, part 4, which is called the Grail Battle. So what is the Grail Battle? Well, before I get into that, I'll talk about affinities. I almost forgot. Affinities are just elements. You have iron, poison, which just, when you poison somebody, they take damage over time. Fire staggers them, but then also does damage over time. And then you have my favorite, lightning. That just staggers them for a little bit, and they get shocked when you build it up enough. You find them at these forges, which kind of look like troughs with the element kind of like spurring out of them. When you find one, and you claim one as like the element that you want to use, a fun fact is if you see another, like let's say you pick lightning and you see another lightning forge, don't skip it, because when you use multiple of the same forge, it actually powers up your element as it stands. So when you use a forge a second time, there will be a new message that says, oh, lightning damage increased, or lightning affinity damage increased. So every time you see a forge, use it. Please use it, because it's only going to serve to make you stronger, which I thought was a great feature when I noticed that was the case. I don't know how I did, but I think I did it once by accident, and it was like, oh, your thing got increased, and I was like, oh, that's cool. So definitely, I don't know what the cap is, but that was just something I forgot to mention. So that's phase 1, 2, and 3 stuff. I think the forges are everywhere, so make sure you hit as many of the chosen element as possible. So now let's get into the Grail Battle. This is the final part. If you're one of the 3 finalists, I like the way they did this. So it's a 3-person battle royale in a reasonably sized arena. It's big enough for it to not feel like you guys are on top of each other, but it's small enough so that you have to like not rely on the space, if that makes any sense. Like you can't just be like all the way on the other side. Like, no, you're still in striking distance somewhat, even from a ranged attack. So you still have to be on your toes and use your skill. At that point, you're walking in with everything you've earned in the first 3 phases. Again, there's 3 of you. And my favorite part about it that they did was that everybody gets 2 lives, which I thought was really cool. So it's not like a one and done thing. If you die, like let's say the other 2 people decide to be jerks and gang up on you, you have one more chance to kind of like come back, maybe swipe off one of their lives, or like, you know, kind of let them duke it out. And then you kind of pick at the remainder and maybe sneak in a win or something like that if you kind of hang back a little bit while they tussle. But everybody has 2 lives, and the last person to lose those lives, or the last one standing, gets to move forward and win. And you get this cool cutscene. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but I will say that each cutscene's like kind of customized to the character. It's pretty cool. It's a small detail that's a part of it. But the winning cutscene is really cool for the Grail battle. I've won out of 3 sessions I did. I won at least once a session, which was nice. My first session, I won twice in a row, my first 2 games, which was really cool. And then the 4th and 5th sessions, I won once each. Again, I don't know if I mentioned this already in the character part in part 2, but I had 2 wins with Albert, 1 with Zork. So it was Albert, then Zork, then I won with Yan, and then my last win before the whole network test shut down for good was with Albert again, hence why he's like my favorite. But yeah, so you win the Grail battle, and there's this cool cutscene that's, again, customized to each character in a very minor but personal and cool kind of way, and, you know, adds a little bit of personality to each one, so it's kind of like, you know, oh, it's my character, it's what they did. So that's pretty much what a Night of Dusk is. I believe I covered everything about it. So yeah, there's 4 phases, 4 parts, 3 phases, 1 final battle, which is a 3-person battle royale. Phase 1 is the build-up phase, you know, character, kin, level ups, passives, forges. Again, double up on forges, triple up, go crazy. Phase 2 and 3 introduces the ritual sites. Phase 2 is kind of like a more dire phase 1. Try to keep leveling up and building up your character, but focus on virtue more. And then phase 3 is just go around, body things, you know, maybe get some more levels in, but mainly go after virtue so you could have that cushion to survive and get to the Grail battle. And then the Grail battle, 3 people, 2 lives each. Don't lose all of yours. Winner, winner. Good for you. So that's pretty much what makes this game what it is. That's the big thing about this game, is the Night of Dusk. So that's what a match looks like. In terms of the time, to be brutally honest with you, I never properly timed what it was. But I think it takes like 20 to 30 minutes a match. I think it's always set, so you don't have to worry about like overtime or anything like that. Also, I forgot to mention there are world events that happen. So there's Star Fragment. You pick that up, you get Virtue. You have to hold it till the end of the phase, and then the Virtue it gives you, I forgot the number, is yours for good. There's those little bugs I mentioned that have the big red things on their back that give you the ability passives. Those appear in abundance. That's another one that's a world event. And then there's this other one that has like a Zeppelin, and everybody gets a transceiver. And when you use it, it like rains fire down on everybody. It's crazy. It happened once. It was kind of nuts. So there are world events. So there's just a lot of like extra stuff added in, and it's really cool what they did. It's not just you jump in, kill things, kill people, and leave. There's little spits and spurts, like the sigils, like the world events, which aren't guaranteed. It is something that is random. I didn't get a world event every phase. I feel like I went a whole game without a world event, honestly. But it's just extra stuff that FromSoft added into this, just as another little spice to the dish. So yeah, as far as I could think, that's pretty much it for Night of Dusk. That's the end of part 3. So now I'm just going to do part 4. It's going to be relatively shorter, and I'm just going to give my general thoughts, if I experienced any crashes, things like that, and then my ranking and all that, and how I felt about the game as on a whole. Part 4. Final part. Are you sick of me yet? I hope not. If you made it this far, good for you. You're really cool. You have the patience of a saint. If you didn't, you're not hearing this. I get paid either way. So, part 4, general thoughts and rank. I have a whole outline here. If you're wondering what the paper shuffling and me looking down is, it's my outline because I'm nuts. So part 4, my general thoughts. In terms of the game as a network test, as it was, full disclosure, for the first session that I woke up this past Friday at 6 a.m. for, it didn't work. The whole thing got overloaded, and, you know, you'd think, oh, that's part of it. So, it's okay. But the whole thing got overloaded and they canceled it. So out of 5 sessions, only 4 pushed through. So I never said anything. But now that we're here and we've gotten this far, I'm just going to say it. And again, full disclosure, the first one got canceled. And, it was kind of funny. Everybody was making light of it. But yeah, I got up 6 a.m. for that. And then I waited about 2 hours until FromSoft canceled it. And I was like sick and I went back to bed because I had work that afternoon. So I needed to catch up on some sleep. So that was like something that we all experienced. But for me personally, I had about 3 crashes. So when you start a match, your character crouches down and teleports. That happened, and then it would crash and kick me back to the match screen where you like hit the button to start a match. That happened 3 times. So I never got kicked fully out of the app. And then another thing that happened once was like a double crash. So I got kicked out of a match and I got kicked out of the hub. So I got sent all the way back through in the form of 2 crashes all the way to the main menu. That was the worst crash I experienced. That happened in the final, I believe one of the last, either the 4th session or the 5th. But that only happened once, which was really good. Overall, again, as a network test, when I was in a match, for the most part, except for the one instance that I just mentioned, when I got into a match, I stood in it. There was never lagging. There was never any kind of boundary breaks or bugs or glitches or anything like you're going through the map, stuff like that. There was never any frame drops. There was never any, oh, hang on, we're shifting hosts or things like that. If you're a Call of Duty person, you know what I'm talking about. It stood stable. It was very stable, ironically, even though the very first session crapped the frick out. But in terms of stability, it was a very, very stable, for like, I'd give it like 80% of my experience. I played probably 10 to 12 hours, because each session is 5 sessions, 4 hours each, so there's 20 hours. So I probably played 10 to 12 hours because I missed some stuff. So yeah. I would say it was a very, very stable network test overall. This was the first time I've ever done something like this, and I hope it's not the last, but for my first time, went pretty well, in terms of not getting like kicked out or again having any kind of frame rate glitches or drops rather, or getting any kind of network stability kind of thing. Obviously everybody's individual Wi-Fi is going to play a part of that, but other than that, it was a very, very good, solid, stable network test in terms of that portion of it. In terms of my thoughts on it as a game, obviously I'm not going to have a full thought on it because this was just a network test and a lot of stuff was cut out, or not cut out, but just not included in terms of what's going to be in the final build. But as a game, like any predominantly, because this is defined as a PvPvE, so it's player versus enemy, which means you're a player and you fight other players, or you team up and you fight enemies. So it's kind of like a mixed bag, which is when I mentioned the trespassers before and how you could join somebody's fight and then you all teleport back to where you were when it was done. That's like the PvE part where you help other players, but then when you're not doing that, you could kill each other if you want. I said nonchalantly. But yeah, in terms of what it is as a game outside of the network test, like any multiplayer game like Call of Duty and Battlefield and whatnot, I could see it kind of one of those games that you just pick up if you're bored and you want to like screw around in it, see if you can get some wins. It's like Fortnite kind of, in nature. You're not playing it because you have a goal. You're playing it just to kind of do something and play a game and mess around and maybe get a win or two, and then you shut off after about 3 or 4 hours, and then you do the same thing the next day. So for me, that's kind of how I read this game and games like it. It's just like a screw around game, I call it. I'm not sitting there and I'm like, oh, I gotta make some story progress. If it's like Night Rain, there's going to be individual like quest lines that give lore and depth to the characters. If not, you're just kind of picking it up, playing it for a couple hours, have a good game, have a bad game, have more bad games, and then you stop, and then you move on and do it the next day. Which, gets a little repetitive when you're hearing it on paper or when you hear it out loud, rather. But for me, if the game's fun enough and it's different enough, and with FromSoft games, you're always trying to do better the next time. So being a FromSoft game, this is going to push you, or at least pushes me in that kind of way. So if I have like 5 bad games, which total like 2 hours, I'm probably going to try and play another couple of games just to try and get better and get a win, because that's kind of what these games do to you, the FromSoft titles. That's why they have such high replayability. But in terms of this game that's fully built to be a multiplayer thing that you just jump in and mess around with, I could see, people just having that high replayability for it, between liking it as a game, and it's a good game, I like it, even with how limited this version was, and also just being a FromSoft title and always being enjoyable. They're one of the best developers ever in the history of the industry. So they rarely miss design-wise, level design-wise, like character design-wise, like everything. Enemies, music. The music was also very good. And yeah, so this game, I would kind of look at it as just something you pick up and mess around with for a couple hours, try to get a win, and then you do it again tomorrow. In terms of my numerical ranking, I'd never give it below an 8. And for those of you that are like, wow, that's like kind of low, not really. 8 for me, if you know me, is very good. 8 and above, just consider it like something you should definitely get and that I recommend. Because of its repetitiveness, for me personally, I can't give it a full 10, because this game is going to be something that I just kind of pick up and mess around with, get some skins for my characters, and anything else that I could pick up that wasn't in the network test. So if maybe they have skins for weapons too, maybe there's new kin and like those other kind of things that they didn't put in there. And then there's that hallway I mentioned. Maybe there's stuff in there. Maybe it's like a merchant and you buy stuff. But other than things like that, unless there's like a story that I can do, for me personally, it's going to be a game that I just mess around with, like Call of Duty. I'll just pick it up, play it for a few hours, and then I'm done. So for me, I'm not going to give it all the way up to a 10 for that. A 9 is kind of steep. Kind of. But I would never give it below an 8. And that's just on the network tests. We have to remember that there is a final build on the way, with probably by the end of this year, within the next couple of months. But I don't think there's a full date for it that I've seen. But yeah, I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10 just for the network test. So if you're both a Switch 2 user and a Souls person, get it. Absolutely, get it. I could tell you, I'm going to have a bit of an edge in there when I play the final build, until all the sweaty people show up that learn faster than me. I'm going to have that edge, and I'm going to enjoy myself. Hopefully get a few wins before they take over and just kick my ass every 5 seconds. But definitely get it. It's going to be enjoyable either way. What's good about the FromSoft games is that a bad game curates, a good game right after, because it's just all about learning, and that's what they do. Some games you have a bad game and it just pisses you off, but the FromSoft games, you have a bad game and it actually teaches you what not to do next time. That's the thing about these games, is that it's not what you should do, it's more of what you shouldn't do, which then kind of is the guiding hand subsequently for what you should do. And the Duskbloods is not going to be any different, I could tell you that much, especially since it's purely PvP, and you're only going to learn more by playing real actual people, not hyperactive, advanced player-like AI, good AI, not the bad AI that we all know and hate. But it's not like that. You're going to be playing real people. You get that practice in. You start to understand, the parrying system. There is a parrying system. You just kind of scream. It's funny. It's a lot tougher than like Bloodborne's parrying system. It's like a 2-button thing. I forgot to mention 2 parts ago with the parrying, but not a lot of people parry. A lot of it's people just using their abilities, which some are very OP, but you learn the parrying system in it, and you end up, just getting better and better, and you learn what to do, what not to do, and yeah, and then eventually you just get there and you're getting some wins and you're feeling good about yourself, because that's what these games do. That's pretty much going to be it. I feel like I promised a short part and we're going on 10 minutes. We're flirting with 10 minutes now, and I apologize profusely. But we have reached the end. I was very thankful to get into this network test. It was cool. I feel cool. I don't care what anybody says. I feel cool for being a part of this thing, especially since I've never done this before. And this was a great first game to do it with. And it kind of coaxes me into wanting to get into more of these for games that I like. If you're watching still, thank you. If you are both my friend who told me to do this, and my cousin who has been wanting me to do video reviews for my food stuff, which I might do if this does well. She knows who she is. Hopefully she's watching still. Hi. You know, I want to thank you guys too for pushing me to do this video thing. This is something new I've never done, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you didn't, that sucks, but whatever. If you want to message me any questions or comments or concerns, tell me why you didn't like this. I take notes. I'm very good about that stuff. Let me know. I'll change whatever I need to change to make this bearable. And if you don't think I need to change anything, then just say something nice down below. I don't care. Again, I get paid either way. But that's pretty much it. Again, if anybody who's actually curious about this game, if you have anything that I said that maybe I didn't elaborate enough on, please let me know. I'll send you a voice message in a DM. And, you know, if you got confused, I will unconfuse you. But for those of you that enjoyed, I'm glad you enjoyed. And until the next one, I will see everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for following along. And thank you for being here. Ciao for now.